My straight roommate found the love letter I never meant him to read. Gay love story. Hello everyone, and welcome back. If you enjoy emotional gay love stories with romance, powerful twists, and unforgettable endings, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. And before we begin, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We love seeing viewers from all over the world. Thank you for being here. Now let's dive into today's story. If Grayson ever finds this letter, I am changing my name and moving somewhere without forwarding addresses. I wrote that at 2:17 in the morning, which was apparently the hour when reasonable adults made excellent decisions about their emotional lives. I was sitting alone at our kitchen table in Chicago with a notebook, cold coffee, and 14 months of feelings I had successfully avoided discussing with the one person responsible for all of them. Then the front door opened. Grayson Reed was home. I immediately closed the notebook. His keys dropped into the ceramic bowl beside the door, followed by the sound of his shoes against the hardwood floor. "Elliot," he called. "No." There was a pause. Interesting answer. Grayson appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing the dark jacket he had left in earlier that evening. His brown hair was slightly messy from the wind, and he looked annoyingly good for a man returning from a date with someone who was not me. "Why are you awake?" he asked. "I enjoy making poor decisions after midnight." Clearly. He opened the refrigerator. "Did you eat dinner?" I stared at him. This was exactly the problem. Grayson could spend 3 hours having dinner with a beautiful woman and still come home concerned that his gay roommate had forgotten to feed himself. "I had crackers." He turned slowly. "Crackers are not dinner. They were expensive crackers. That does not improve their nutritional value." He pulled out the leftover pizza from yesterday and started heating it. I should have been grateful. Instead, my heart behaved like Grayson had personally composed a love song rather than pushed buttons on a microwave. Loving him had happened through moments exactly like this. No dramatic revelation. No perfect sunset. Just Grayson remembering my coffee order, tightening the loose leg on my desk chair, bringing home the cereal I liked, and leaving the hallway light on when I worked late because he knew I hated coming home to a dark apartment. "How was the date?" I asked, because apparently suffering was a hobby. Grayson leaned against the counter. "Fine. Fine. The most dangerous four-letter word in the English language. Just fine. She was nice." That sounds enthusiastic. I do not think we clicked. Something hopeful tried to rise inside me. I immediately buried it beneath common sense. Grayson had dated women for as long as I had known him. One unsuccessful dinner did not mean the universe had suddenly rewritten reality for my convenience. The microwave beeped. Grayson placed the pizza in front of me. "Eat. You are very controlling. You had crackers for dinner. Luxury crackers." His mouth curved into the smile that had been causing structural damage to my emotional stability for over a year. "Good night, Elliot." "Night." I waited until his bedroom door closed before reopening the notebook. Then I stopped joking. I wrote that the apartment felt like home because I knew his footsteps in the hallway. I wrote that bad days became easier when he asked how work went and actually waited for the answer. I wrote that loving him was not the part that frightened me anymore. Losing this was. Someday Grayson would meet someone, move out, build a life somewhere else, and probably never understand why hearing his key turn in our front door had become one of my favorite sounds. When I finished, the page looked far too honest to exist. I read it once and felt my entire body reject the concept of vulnerability. "Absolutely not," I whispered. Tomorrow I would destroy it. That was the responsible plan. For tonight, I folded the pages, slipped them into an envelope, and hid it inside an old blue hardcover novel on the living room bookshelf, the one Grayson had ignored for nearly 2 years. I pushed the book safely between 2 others and went to bed convinced I had contained the disaster. I had not. The next morning, I woke up with exactly 3 priorities: survive my client presentation, drink enough coffee to qualify as functional, and destroy the letter before Grayson developed a sudden interest in 19th century fiction. Naturally, I accomplished only one of those things. By 8:15, I was standing in the kitchen wearing a navy sweater, one black sock, one gray sock, and the expression of a man whose professional future depended on finding a missing flash drive. Grayson sat at the counter drinking coffee with insulting levels of calm. "Check beside your laptop," he said. "I already checked." "Check again. I resent your confidence." I walked into the living room. The flash drive was beside my laptop. I returned without acknowledging this betrayal. Grayson raised an eyebrow. Found it? No. It is in your hand. This conversation is over. He smiled into his coffee. 10 minutes later, I rushed out of the apartment without remembering the blue hardcover, the envelope, or my plan to erase all physical evidence of emotional honesty. My presentation was downtown at 10, and Chicago traffic was already demonstrating its commitment to chaos. I was halfway there when my phone buzzed. Grayson, can I borrow the blue hardcover from the living room shelf? I stared at the message. Nothing happened for approximately 2 seconds. Then every alarm in my nervous system activated simultaneously. Why? I typed. Research, he replied. Research. Of course. After nearly 2 years of ignoring that exact book, Grayson had apparently awakened with an academic calling. I should have told him no. I should have invented mold. Termites. A rare literary curse. Instead, my rideshare stopped abruptly in traffic, my client called, and I typed sure before my brain remembered why that word was catastrophic. The realization hit while I was standing in a conference room 20 minutes later. I had just reached the slide explaining a new brand identity when my mind supplied one devastating image, the envelope between those pages. Elliot, my client asked. I blinked at the screen. Yes. You were explaining the color palette. Right? Blue. Blue hardcover. Excellent. My soul attempted to resign. Somehow, I finished the presentation. I answered questions about typography while mentally planning a new life in Montana. The second I reached the elevator, I texted Grayson. Find the book? 3 dots appeared, then vanished. They appeared again, vanished again. No response. My stomach dropped. Maybe he had not found the envelope. Maybe it had slipped deeper into the binding. Maybe Grayson had opened directly to chapter 12 and remained blissfully unaware that his roommate had written several hundred words about the emotional significance of his footsteps. I called him. No answer. Hope lasted another 11 seconds. Then Grayson texted, "We should talk when you get home." I stared at those 7 words like they were a legal summons. The ride back felt approximately 4 years long. When I finally reached our building, I climbed the stairs too quickly, unlocked the apartment, and stepped inside. The kitchen was quiet. Grayson stood beside the counter. The blue hardcover lay open in front of him. Beside it was the envelope. Open. My letter rested unfolded beneath his hand. Grayson looked up. His face was unreadable, which was somehow worse than anger. I stopped near the doorway, still holding my keys. Every excuse I had rehearsed disappeared. How much did you read? I asked. Grayson glanced at the pages, then met my eyes again. His voice was gentle. Enough to know we really need to talk. Enough? I repeated, because apparently humiliation had reduced my vocabulary to single-word echoes. Grayson stayed beside the kitchen counter while I remained near the door, still holding my keys like they might unlock an alternate version of my life, where I had remembered the envelope before answering his text. Okay, great. Enough is a very flexible amount. Elliot, did you reach the part about the hallway light? His expression softened. Yes. Fantastic. Then I assume my dignity has officially left Illinois. Grayson almost smiled, which somehow made everything worse. I set my keys down and pointed toward the pages. Before this becomes unnecessarily dramatic, I should clarify that I write things sometimes. You are a graphic designer. Creative. Industries overlap. So the letter is fiction? Absolutely. Grayson glanced down. About a man named Grayson? I swallowed. Common name. Who works at a sports rehabilitation clinic? Growing profession. Who alphabetizes the spices? That could describe millions of deeply organized Americans. His eyebrow lifted. You wrote that I alphabetized them incorrectly because paprika should not be separated from smoked paprika. I closed my eyes. I would like to stop clarifying now. The refrigerator hummed behind him. A car passed outside. Ordinary sounds continued as if my entire emotional life were not lying unfolded beside a coffee mug. Grayson waited until I looked at him again. Is it about me? No joke arrived. I searched for one anyway, but there are apparently limits even to cowardice. Yes. Grayson inhaled slowly. His eyes dropped toward the letter before returning to mine. How long? That feels like an unnecessarily advanced question. Elliot. I looked toward the window. 14 months. Silence. I hated silence immediately. 14 months, he repeated. Approximately. I did not maintain a spreadsheet. Grayson went still. My stomach tightened. There it was. Shock. Discomfort. Maybe pity. Every expression I had spent 14 months trying to avoid seeing on his face. I know, I said quickly. It is weird. I did not say that. You did not need to. Can you let me finish one thought? I would strongly prefer not to. I moved toward my bedroom because standing there felt impossible. Look, you were never supposed to know. I wrote it because keeping everything in my head was getting exhausting. You found it by accident. Nobody did anything wrong. Then why are you acting like you committed a crime? Because tomorrow morning we are supposed to stand 6 feet apart making coffee while you know I have assigned emotional significance to the sound of your keys. Grayson stared at me. I need time to think. For harmless words. My brain translated them instantly into rejection with excellent customer service. I nodded too fast. Of course. That does not mean what you think it means. You have no idea what I think it means. I have lived with you for 2 years. I have some idea. I reached my bedroom doorway. I can stay with Daniel for a few days. Grayson straightened. Why? To give you space. I did not ask for space. Then I will start looking for another apartment. His face changed completely. What? It makes sense. No, it does not. Grayson, you are straight. I am in love with you. We cannot exactly return to arguing about laundry detergent like this never happened. I never said we should. You also did not say you wanted me to stay. The words came out quieter than everything before them. Grayson stopped. For 1 second, something uncertain crossed his face, but I was too frightened to understand it. I stepped into my room. Elliot, wait. You do not have to make this easier for me. I closed the door gently, leaned against it, and finally let myself breathe. On the other side, Grayson said nothing. Somehow, his silence followed me into the room. For the next 2 days, Grayson and I became experts in avoiding each other inside 900 square feet. It was almost impressive. We had lived together for nearly 2 years, yet suddenly we could coordinate showers, meals, coffee, and refrigerator access with the precision of an airport control tower. Conversation disappeared. Sticky notes took its place. Trash goes out tonight. Grayson wrote beside the coffee maker. Thanks, I wrote underneath. We need detergent. I will get it. Leftover pasta is yours. Great. Apparently heartbreak came with excellent household management. I worked from my bedroom instead of the living room, emerging only when necessary. Grayson left early for the clinic and returned after 6. Every time his keys landed in the ceramic bowl, my body reacted before my brain could remind it that we were currently participating in the world's most uncomfortable roommate experiment. By Thursday afternoon, I had 12 apartment listings open on my laptop. One studio in Logan Square looked reasonable if I ignored the suspicious stain beside the radiator. Another was farther north and advertised historic character, which seemed like real estate language for plumbing that remembered the moon landing. I was comparing security deposits when Grayson walked into the living room. He stopped behind the couch. What are you doing? I lowered the laptop screen approximately 2 inches. A brilliant strategy. Working. Those are apartment listings. Graphic design has become very architectural. Elliot. I closed my eyes. Yes. I am looking. Grayson moved around the couch until he stood across from me. He was still wearing dark slacks and a gray quarter zip from work, but the calm expression he normally carried home from the clinic was gone. You were serious? About moving? Yes. Why? I stared at him. We discussed this. No. You announced it while panicking and closed your bedroom door. That counts as discussion in several cultures. Stop joking. His voice stayed quiet, but something underneath it made me close the laptop completely. Fine. Grayson folded his arms. I never rejected you. My chest tightened. You said you needed time to think. Because I needed time to think. That is generally what people say before delivering bad news politely. You decided that. I did not. What was I supposed to think? Maybe you could have asked me. I stood because sitting suddenly felt too vulnerable. Asked you what? Whether my straight roommate needed 48 hours to invent a gentle way to tell me he does not feel the same. Grayson's jaw tightened. You keep saying straight like it ends the conversation. I stopped. Does it not? He looked away for a second, then back at me. There was something unfamiliar in his expression. Not anger. Frustration, maybe, but directed as much at himself as at me. That is what I thought, he said. What does that mean? Grayson exhaled slowly. It means I have spent 2 days trying to understand why the idea of you leaving this apartment makes me feel like I cannot breathe normally. My thoughts scattered. Hope appeared instantly, bright and reckless. I pushed it away. Grayson, please do not say things like that because you feel guilty. I do not feel guilty. Then what do you feel? He opened his mouth, stopped, and looked toward the kitchen. That is the problem. I do not know yet. There it was again. Uncertainty. I hated how much I wanted it to mean something. Then I should still move. Grayson looked back at me sharply. Why? Because I cannot build my life around maybe. Silence settled between us. This time, Grayson did not retreat into it. He reached into his pocket, unlocked his phone, and walked toward me. You are right. My stomach dropped. Then he continued. So maybe is not enough. But before you decide, I have never felt anything. There is something you need to see. He turned the screen toward me. The first photograph showed me laughing at our favorite diner. The date beneath it was 8 months old. Grayson swiped. Another photograph appeared. Then another. All of me. All taken long before he ever found my letter. I stared at Grayson's phone as if it had personally betrayed the laws of friendship. The first picture was me laughing at our favorite diner, head tilted back, one hand wrapped around a coffee mug. The next showed me standing beside Lake Michigan in October while the wind turned my hair into a public emergency. Then came a photograph of me asleep on the couch wearing Grayson's old college sweatshirt. You took that while I was sleeping? I asked. You fell asleep halfway through the movie. That is not consent to create a documentary. You were holding the popcorn bowl against your chest. Delete it. No. He swiped again. Me carrying groceries through the rain. Me sitting cross-legged on the kitchen floor assembling a bookshelf. Me holding a crooked little Christmas ornament and laughing at something outside the frame. Months of ordinary moments. Nothing romantic enough to explain away. Nothing recent enough to blame on the letter. Why do you have all these? I asked. Grayson lowered the phone slightly. That is what I have been asking myself. Friends take pictures of friends. They do. So this proves nothing. Maybe. I hated that word. Grayson apparently did too, because he opened another screen. His notes app appeared. At the top was my coffee order. Large cold brew, splash of oat milk, 1 pump vanilla. Below it were reminders about my favorite Thai restaurant, the name of the cold medicine I used last winter, and a note that said Elliot. Hates cilantro but keeps pretending he can tolerate it. I looked up. That last one is defamatory. You spent 15 minutes removing cilantro from tacos. It tastes like soap. That is not the important part. It is important to me. Grayson smiled briefly. Then his expression became serious again. I started keeping these notes because remembering things about you felt important. My chest tightened. You remember things about everyone. Not like this. The room went very still. Grayson opened a message thread with someone named Emily. My sister, he explained. The date was 8 months earlier. At the bottom sat an unfinished message that had never been sent. I think I am too attached to my roommate. I read it twice. 8 months ago? Yes. Why did you not send it? Grayson looked toward the window. Because I did not know what I meant by it. I handed the phone back carefully. You have only dated women. I know. You told me you were straight. Because that is what I have always believed. His voice remained calm, but his fingers tightened slightly around the phone. Nothing ever gave me a reason to question it. Until the letter. No. His answer came immediately. That is what I am trying to show you. The letter did not create this. My heartbeat became impossible to ignore. Grayson continued. When you stay somewhere overnight, this apartment feels wrong. When something funny happens at work, you are the first person I want to tell. When you mention dating someone, I become irritated and then invent reasonable explanations for why. Protective roommate instincts. I asked. That was one of them. Despite everything, I laughed. Grayson did too, quietly. Then he stepped closer, leaving enough distance that I never felt cornered. I am not telling you I suddenly understand everything, he said. And I am not asking you to become some experiment while I figure myself out. The humor disappeared from me. Then what are you asking? Grayson glanced at my closed laptop, where 12 possible exits from our life together were waiting. Do not sign a lease yet. Grayson, I know that is not enough. He swallowed. For the first time since I had known him, he looked genuinely nervous. But I think I have spent months calling something friendship because it was the only explanation I knew how to use. Hope rose inside me again. This time, I could not bury it. And now? I asked. His eyes held mine. Now I want to find out what happens when I stop pretending that explanation is enough. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Grayson had just admitted that friendship might not explain what he felt for me, and my brain responded by forgetting every useful sentence in the English language. Find out how, I finally asked. Grayson looked down at his phone, then set it on the coffee table. Slowly. That sounds ominous. It is supposed to sound responsible. Those are often the same thing. His mouth curved briefly, but the nervousness remained in his eyes. Elliot, I have dated women my entire adult life. I called myself straight because that description always made sense. Until now. Until you. 2 words. Completely unreasonable effect on my heartbeat. I looked away before my face could become evidence. Grayson continued. I do not know what label fits me. Maybe I will eventually. Maybe that matters less than I thought it did. But I know I do not want to use you to answer the question. I looked back at him. What do you mean? I mean you are not an experiment. His voice was steady now. I am not going to kiss you just to see whether I like kissing a man. I am not going to flirt with you for a week and then decide it was curiosity. You have had real feelings for 14 months. I need to treat that like it matters. Something in my chest loosened. I had imagined dozens of versions of this conversation. None included Grayson protecting me from his own uncertainty. So what are we supposed to do? I asked. Be honest. That sounds terrible. I know. Anything easier? No. I sighed. Fine. Define honest. Grayson leaned against the edge of the chair. No jealousy games. No pretending nothing happened. No touching each other just to test my reaction. If something feels confusing, we say it. Immediately. Preferably before you search for another apartment with historic plumbing. I narrowed my eyes. You saw that listing? The bathroom had green tile from another century. It had character. It had a radiator that looked haunted. A laugh escaped me. The apartment suddenly felt less like a courtroom. And if you realize this is only friendship? I asked. Grayson's expression softened. I tell you, even if you think I will leave. He hesitated. Especially then. That answer hurt and comforted me at the same time. And if it is not friendship? Grayson held my gaze. I tell you that too. Silence settled between us again, but this one felt different. Not empty. Waiting. Grayson's hand rested on the coffee table, only a few inches from mine. His fingers moved slightly, then stopped. Can I ask something? You have already established a terrifying commitment to communication. Can I hold your hand? My heart immediately forgot every boundary we had just discussed. That seemed suspiciously like touching. Not as a test. His eyes stayed on mine. Because I want to. That distinction mattered. More than I expected. I turned my hand palm up between us. Grayson waited one more second before placing his hand in mine. Warm. Familiar. New. His fingers closed gently around mine, without pulling me closer. We sat there like 2 men who had somehow turned holding hands on a couch into advanced emotional engineering. Well, I whispered. Grayson looked down at our hands. His thumb moved once across my knuckles. I like this. Very scientific. I'm a physical therapist. Then provide a professional assessment. He smiled. Elevated heart rate. I blinked. Mine or yours? Grayson looked at me, and for once there was no uncertainty in his expression. Both. My chest tightened. I squeezed his hand once. How much time do you need? His smile faded into something more serious. Not forever. I promise. Just enough that whatever I tell you next is something I actually understand. I nodded. Okay. Grayson's shoulders relaxed. Okay. Do not make me repeat emotionally mature decisions. I have a reputation. He laughed quietly. Neither of us let go. For the first time since he found the letter, I was not thinking about leaving. I was thinking about what staying might become. 3 days later, Grayson asked me on a date while I was standing in the kitchen trying to determine whether yogurt that had expired yesterday represented courage or poor judgment. Are you free Saturday? He asked. I looked up from the container. That depends on whether this is a roommate question or an emergency involving groceries. Grayson leaned against the counter, wearing the calm expression that usually meant he had already thought through whatever I was about to overthink. I am asking you on a date. I slowly put the yogurt down. A date? Yes. With me. That is generally how invitations work. My heart immediately became an unreliable narrator. You understand that calling something a date creates expectations. That is why I called it a date. Saturday arrived cold and bright. Grayson drove us to our usual diner near Lincoln Park, which felt suspiciously ordinary until he walked around the car and opened my door. I stared at him. You have never done that before. I know. So that was intentional. Very. Apparently one word could cause cardiovascular problems. Inside, Grayson ordered my coffee without asking. Large cold brew, splash of oat milk, 1 pump vanilla. I tried not to assign emotional significance to it. This lasted approximately 4 seconds. When breakfast arrived, he moved the pickle from my plate to his. What did that mean? I asked. Grayson paused. What did what mean? The pickle. You hate pickles. We agreed I could ask when something feels confusing. His mouth twitched. The pickle means you hate pickles. Disappointingly practical. Would you prefer I compose a speech? Not before pancakes. After breakfast, we walked toward the lakefront. Lake Michigan stretched gray-blue beneath the winter sky, and the wind coming off the water made Chicago feel approximately 12 degrees colder than whatever the weather app claimed. We had taken this walk before. That was the strange part. Same path. Same railing. Same man beside me. Different intention. Grayson's hand brushed mine once. Then again. The third time, his fingers remained close. He looked at me without saying anything. I turned my palm toward his. He laced our fingers together. No experiment. No accidental contact. A choice. We walked another 100 yards before stopping near the railing. Grayson turned toward me. Something in his expression changed. His eyes dropped briefly, then returned to mine. My pulse accelerated. He stepped closer. I stopped breathing normally. Then Grayson stopped too. He took half a step back. Disappointment arrived before logic could intercept it. I released his hand. Right. His eyebrows drew together. What happened? Nothing. Elliot, you changed your mind. That is fine. I did not change my mind. You looked like you were about to kiss me, and then reconsidered the entire concept. Grayson stared at me for a second. You wanted me to kiss you? I gave him a look. I wrote several pages about being in love with you. I thought the documentation was thorough. Despite himself, he laughed. Then his expression softened. I wanted to kiss you. Past tense is doing excellent work here. I still want to. I looked at him. Then why did you stop? Grayson glanced toward the lake before meeting my eyes again. Because I promised you I would not use you to figure myself out. Okay. If I kissed you today, part of me would still be asking what the kiss means. His voice lowered. I do not want our first kiss to be a question. The frustration inside me disappeared. Grayson stepped closer again, leaving enough space for me to choose the distance. When I kiss you, Elliot, I want to already know why I am doing it. And why would that be? He held my gaze. Because I chose you. Not because I was curious. Not because I needed proof. My throat tightened. That was extremely inconveniently romantic. Grayson smiled. I practiced. Of course you did. He offered his hand again. I took it. We continued along the lake, fingers linked against the cold, and something inside me finally settled. For 14 months, I had wanted Grayson to choose me. Standing beside him that morning, I realized the waiting mattered because he was trying to make sure that when he finally did, neither of us would have to wonder what his choice meant. That evening, Grayson returned my letter. He did not leave it on the counter or slide it under my bedroom door like evidence from an emotional crime scene. He carried it into the living room while I was pretending to watch television and sat beside me on the couch. I think this belongs to you, he said. I looked at the envelope in his hand. I was hoping we could agree that document never existed. I read it again. My head turned toward him. You voluntarily reread the most embarrassing thing I have ever written? Twice. I need you to understand that this friendship has become increasingly difficult to defend. Grayson smiled, but his fingers remained wrapped around the envelope. Something was different. The humor was there, but underneath it sat the serious expression I had learned not to interrupt too quickly. There is something I did not tell you this morning, he said. I muted the television. That sounds promising. I know why I stopped now. You explained that. Not all of it. Grayson looked down at the letter. I was afraid. I blinked. Grayson admitting fear felt like hearing a weather forecast announce indoor rain. Of kissing me. Of what comes after. His eyes met mine. I kept thinking that if I tried this and got it wrong, I would lose you completely. The joke waiting in my throat disappeared. Grayson, I know you were afraid I would reject you. I was afraid I would make a promise before I understood myself, hurt you, and turn this apartment into somewhere neither of us could live anymore. He paused. Then I realized I have been making decisions based on the possibility of losing you for months. The room felt very quiet. I looked at the envelope between his hands. I have been doing that for 14 months. I know. It is exhausting. I know that too. I leaned back against the couch. So where does that leave us? Grayson set the letter on the coffee table. With something I finally understand. My heart accelerated, but I forced myself to wait. I do not need to know what label I will use 5 years from now to know what I feel when I am with you. His voice remained steady. I missed you while you were sitting 20 feet away from me. I hated seeing apartment listings because I wanted you here. I asked you on a date because I wanted it to be a date. And this morning, I wanted to kiss you because it was you. I swallowed. That sounds suspiciously like an answer. It is. Grayson shifted slightly toward me, then stopped. The space between us remained mine to cross or keep. Elliot, can I kiss you? 14 months of impossible hope condensed into one completely ordinary question. Somehow, that made it better. No dramatic music. No perfect speech. Just Grayson asking and waiting. Yes, I said. He leaned closer slowly enough that I could have changed my mind. I did not. His hand rested lightly beside mine on the couch, and then his lips met mine. The kiss was gentle, brief, and almost careful. Nothing about it felt like a test. When he pulled back, we stayed close, both of us smiling in the slightly stunned way people do when reality finally catches up with something they have imagined too many times. Well, I whispered. Grayson looked at me. Still not nothing. I laughed, and he did too. Then his fingers found mine between us. For the record, I said, you took an unreasonable amount of time reaching that conclusion. I wanted to be sure. And now, Grayson squeezed my hand gently. Now I am sure I want another date. My chest warmed. That is all. And another kiss, if you say yes. I pretended to consider it. Your negotiation skills need work. His smile softened. Is that a yes? I looked at the man I had spent 14 months believing I could never have, then at our hands resting together on the couch. Yes, I said. This time, neither of us needed to ask what it meant. A few weeks later, I woke to the smell of coffee and immediately assumed Grayson wanted something. This was unfair, considering he made coffee almost every morning. But dating your former straight roommate apparently turned ordinary kitchen activity into suspicious behavior. I walked out wearing an old sweatshirt and found Grayson beside the counter before work. 2 mugs were waiting. So was a white envelope with my name, Elliot Carter, written neatly across the front. I stopped. No. Grayson looked up. Good morning. There is an envelope. I can see that. We have historical evidence that letters are dangerous in this apartment. His mouth curved. This one is supposed to be read. That distinction alone made my chest tighten. The last few weeks had been strangely normal and completely different. Grayson still alphabetized the spices according to rules only he understood. I still abandoned coffee mugs near my laptop until he collected them with increasingly judgmental expressions. We still ordered too much Thai food on Fridays and argued about which movies deserved a second viewing. But now Grayson reached for my hand when we walked together. Now he kissed me goodbye before leaving for the clinic. Now when he called something a date, neither of us needed clarification. I picked up the envelope. Should I prepare emotionally? Probably. Terrible answer. I opened it anyway. Grayson's letter was shorter than mine because apparently emotional efficiency was another skill he had acquired in physical therapy. He wrote that he still did not have every answer about himself, and for once, he was comfortable admitting that. What he did know was simpler. He wanted mornings with me. He wanted our terrible movie debates, grocery arguments, lakefront walks, and the ridiculous coffee order he had memorized years before understanding why remembering it mattered. Then I reached the final lines. Months ago, I had written that loving him felt like living inside a home I was always preparing to lose. Grayson's answer was that he wanted to stop making me prepare for goodbye. He wanted to stay. I read that part again. Then once more, because dignity had already abandoned this relationship several weeks ago. Grayson. Yeah. I lowered the page. This is extremely dramatic. He folded his arms. You wrote several pages about my footsteps. That was private drama. You hid it inside a book. Exactly. Responsible containment. He laughed and walked around the counter. When he reached me, he stopped close but did not assume anything. Even after weeks together, he still treated affection as something chosen, not owed. Can I kiss you? He asked. I looked at him. You know I have said yes every time. That does not mean I stop asking when it matters. There it was. The quiet reason this worked. Not because one letter had magically changed Grayson. Not because I had waited long enough and somehow earned him. It worked because after the secret disappeared, we kept choosing honesty instead of assumptions. Yes, I said. His kiss was soft and familiar, brief enough that our coffee was still warm when he stepped back. I folded his letter carefully. I am keeping this forever. I expected that. I opened the kitchen drawer and placed it beside my original letter. 2 envelopes. One I had hidden because I was terrified of being seen. One Grayson had left in plain sight because he wanted to be understood. What happens when the lease ends? I asked. Grayson picked up his coffee. We renew it. I stared at him. That is your grand romantic conclusion? Would you prefer the Logan Square apartment with haunted plumbing? Never mention that place again. He smiled and reached across the counter. I took his hand. Outside, Chicago was already awake. Inside, the apartment looked exactly as it always had. Same kitchen, same coffee maker, same ceramic bowl waiting for Grayson's keys at the end of the day. But I no longer listened for those keys because I was afraid of someday hearing them for the last time. Now, when the lock turned and Grayson came home, I knew something I had been too frightened to imagine when I wrote that first letter. Home was no longer the place where I secretly loved him. It was the place where we had chosen to stay.